Welcome to another edition of Sports Leadership Exchange. And today I have a distinguished guest, Claude Bolton, who has not only played the game from a grassroots level, but gone all the way up to being a coach educator, playing national team, coaching national team. And we'll get into some of that stuff later. But Claude, I just want to say thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's my privilege, actually.
So give us a little background. How did you get into coaching, Coach Claude?
Coaching came after playing. I think the first memory I would have, my dad, who recently passed, I remember him pulling a little soccer ball back for me, like just pulling it backward. And I was in awe. It's my earliest memory, I think, is a football memory, wondering how did he do that? And then I went on, played grassroots, as you'd mentioned, was fortunate to go into whatever provincial team, provincial leagues they had at the time in my era. I was in a generation between MLS and the old NASL. That is a variety of leagues, Michigan Ontario Soccer League, NSL in Toronto, Quebec, those kind of things I was fortunate to play. And I ended up getting a scholarship. I had an opportunity to do some trials in Europe, played a little bit in South America, and got a scholarship in Pennsylvania. And my coach happened to be a coach educator. And I was older since I went to school after I'd played. And he said, coach, he said, Claude, perhaps you'd be a good fit for coaching. You should consider that. And I started taking some licenses. I was in the States, so I started with the USSF licenses, enjoyed it very much, realized that I didn't know as much as I thought I did as a player. And once I opened to that, continued my coaching education. So the licenses in the States, came back, did some of the licenses in Canada, went and did UEFA, as a few people were doing that, and started those trails. And that led to coaching. So it started, my first opportunity truly was with a club out in Toronto, one of the bigger clubs at the time, in a place called Scarborough. Actually, it was West Rouge. And we started that. I was maybe the third technical director they ever had in Ontario. That was a full-time position. And then it took off from there.
Well, it's so fantastic. So obviously went from playing grassroots at a club and then all of a sudden you're on a scholarship. So just before I jump straight into the coaching, how was that jump? Because I know a lot of our listeners, are probably playing club soccer now and want to get to that next level. And, sometimes they hear, these are the things you need to be able to do or outside of the academic. But how did you find that jump as an athlete going from grassroots to now a very highly reputable school in the States?
I think it can be challenging. However, I found as you open your heart and your mind, it became a lot easier. So first of all, by going and having people around you who've experienced it, recognizing that there are many, many people who know far more than you about the game and what this process is. If you can ask those people, they will always point you in the right directions. Your federations or associations or provincial bodies, they will always have the resources to guide. So by me being willing to ask questions, that made it, for me, a little easier. Again, I had the guidance of my NCAA head coach, who was part of a state association. But I think it's significant that you really, truly need to set aside what you think you know or what you do know. Set aside what you know and then open up to hearing what other people are going to tell you about the game. Because the piece we're talking about is you're going from playing, there's ways to transfer knowledge. It is an art, it is a skill, and you have to develop that like any other.
The big thing I got loads of golden nuggets out of that, but mindset. Because again, we do see where people think they know it all, or because they've been told they're the best players, the tendencies of laziness can get in there. And I just love how you shape that and gave us your real experience, which is huge. So for any players out there, any parents watching this, any coaches watching this, please grab your little pens out and pick some nuggets of what Coach Claude just said there. So I'm going to jump into the coaching now. So you've started coaching, and obviously this was after, going all over the place and doing coaching licenses again in different countries, different states, which again is a testament to you with that mindset of, I want to learn. If I'm going to be doing this, this is what I want to learn and get better at it. So you say you're a TD. I think you said you're a TD of a club. From going from being on a coaching course to now the reality of, guiding coaches, guiding parents, the club, the board. How did you find what you learned on the coaching courses transfer into helping you on your day-to-day role as a TD?
Well, I think I was blessed. I mean, any course I will take delve probably in any industry, any course where people are offering knowledge and experience. There has to be things you can take from there, whether it reinforces what you think, whether it challenges what you think, or whether it's contradictory and makes you more firm in the things you believe. But all of them were about organization and then the transfer of knowledge. So what taking that, I had to commit and be diligent that these are the ways to do things. I had to appreciate that there are many different perspectives on how to deliver, that there would not just be mine. Sometimes I learned hard lessons that way and thinking that I was right. At other times, it was to see, hey, how do we now coach these parents, players, board members? No different than when you're coaching a team, to help them see different pathways and then collectively trying to decide which pathway. It is very often not my way or the highway. It is simply, hey, these things can work, and off you go. I was fortunate to have always search for and find mentors, asking questions in the soccer community, who's who, where do they go, how do they do this, be willing to go and sometimes volunteer in different roles or just mirror people. That I've heard works in many industries, and it definitely works in a football coaching industry. Find the people that you can move on to. I was fortunate that when I was a TD at one club, we had taken on futsal as part of our programming. And I was blessed that I just have some young players who were quite apt at the game, skill-wise, in Toronto at the time. And we won a provincial championship, whatever it was at the time. But someone had saw me there and said, hey, would you consider working with the provincial organization of futsal? I did. It was new. There were relatively not a lot of people in that industry pursuing the coaching. And then that got me a look from a national team. At the time, Futsal Canada, which is the national futsal teams, operated separately than Canada Soccer. FIFA had not forced the merge yet, but I got an opportunity to coach the national team for a short stint. And we went to Brazil, and while you're there, you're asking questions. I know you're an advocate of every aspect of life, asking questions, acknowledging I don't know the answers. I do that all the time, whether I sit down to someone who's played, coached, administrated. Asking questions is the key, and then you can find the path you want.
That so again, so the listeners who are listening to us again, that mindset, I've always been hungry to continuously learn, continuously look at things and can see where you're at. So I love that share, Coach Claude. So fast forward a few years now. So from those early days of being a TD and then obviously futsal, share with us some of the roles you've had and how each role is built on you and your skill set to now become the elite coach and coach educator you are.
Well, I'd say, as you mentioned again, the key to all this, to underscore, and you mentioned it twice already, is the mindset of always wanting to learn. It is not always wanting to show and give my opinion. And you do that in that process. But this is about learning. So when I was the head coach of Futsal Canada's national team for that short stint and we went to Brazil, I was on one of the websites that said, oh, Claude Bolton takes over Futsal Canada for this Brazil tournament and so on. And the president of the Guyana Football Association, which I had played on their national team, had noticed the name. It was about 10 years after I played. And he ended up being on a FIFA futsal committee and ended up saying, hey, I know that guy. They asked me to come in. Long story short, I ended up being the technical director of the Guyana Football Federation. Now, that being said, it's a big move. You're trying to stay hungry. I'm trying to manage family. I have a child. How do I get to South America? How do I do this? But you chart your course, you set your priorities, and you try to balance everything, as you do in any aspect of life. So I was able to be the technical director in the Guyana Football Federation. Again, that comes from asking a lot of questions and keeping in touch with mentors. From there, I came back to North America and then took on clubs again. Then I had opportunities through connections to go to New York Red Bulls MLS youth program. At times you're deciding, is there enough money? How does it work? What lifestyle do you want? But if you're truly searching the next level, it's not the money that's going to drive you. So the opportunity to New York Red Bulls opened a wealth of network, and I was able to work in their regional development school and so on. I was able to go from there back to clubs. I landed a university position in U Sport, which was called a different name at the time, at Trent University. So I was always willing to take on the jobs that people didn't think were glamorous. For example, Trent University was the last place team in the country. So a few people would be like, why go there? Well, that's an opportunity to build. I was fortunate. It wasn't all coaching. I was able to do a good recruiting job. And within 3 years, we were the first time in 22 years, we made playoffs, things of that nature. So we're not talking about winning nationals because not everyone's going to win nationals. This is about building a program based on what you believe. As you said, some of the skills I took to have these things happen were the ability to organize, plan, and articulate those plans to the people who are making decisions that are higher than me, whether that's an athletic director or the president, vice president of a university or a club. A few more opportunities when I took over another school at another level in CCAA, another college, Canada College. I helped to build another one at Portage. Again, for me, my path as not being a superstar who played in the Premier League, I settled into a CONCACAF role. I understood that I was a CONCACAF product. I understood and took pride in the joy that leagues were building here at the time, MLS and other things like that. And I truly love it. So I pursued that level and continuously asked about roles to get there. Again, volunteering, lower paying jobs to get your foot in the door. And if you believe in yourself, my father always used to say, can't keep a good man down. Someone will see your talents eventually. And then it ended up that I had an opportunity from an academy, surf academy in the States, opened in Canada, to go to India. And I went over to run an academy in India with a club that was connected to Rush. The Rush brand is a North American soccer brand, but it was connected. And again, running the academy, I had an opportunity to coach a women's team at the time. And when the coach was away, and they asked if I'd take over. So I ended up becoming the head coach of a women's pro team in India. And again, all those skills we were talking about, if the abilities to organize, articulate, simplify. The game is simple, but so are the other aspects behind it. The planning has to be clean and clear. Truly, planning is everything. I was able to guide that team. We were fortunate. We had a little bounce here and there, and we went to the national championships in India. So India, huge population. The game is growing. The women's game is treated differently, but they play it like tournament round. But we went to national championships. Unbelievable experience meeting all the FIFA instructors or the people who guide FIFA in all those countries, or how FIFA comes in and guides. You get to meet those people, ask questions. What's next? Where's the game going? I don't know if people always realize the game is evolving far ahead of when we are informed of new rules. And so if you can ask those people, you're seeing it all the time. Now, that's not just high level ball. In all those positions, you have access to people call it the lower levels of the game. I'm just going to call them grassroots, the younger levels of the game. Some of the best coaches in the world that I've met, that I've been fortunate to meet, have been at those levels. They are the ones transferring the knowledge to prepare youth on how to be prepared should other opportunities come about. At the same time, it's all about life skills. You're sharing life with children, but you're giving them a toy, the ball, to help them find these ways. If they're fortunate to find that path, terrific. That brought me back to North America, and I continued. I had some opportunities. I was able to land at another last place team in the country, which was Ambrose University. I had no wins for like 5 to 7 years. I took over the women's program. As a matter of fact, I might share here. Many of my colleagues said, don't go there. Do not go to Calgary at Ambrose. There is no money. There is no support. There's no reputation. What can we build? There were 2 people, one of which was yourself, who had mentioned to me, what a clean slate. What an ideal job. what an opportunity to be somewhere where you can mark the field out how you want, so to say. And I did take it, and they did support, and they did invest in it financially, and they did give me opportunities to grow people. That's the real challenge, as opposed to walking into a team already existing and winning. But it has been challenging in such a positive way. It pulls every ounce out of you, right? To try to recruit, to handle budgets with some restraints. It's a Christian institution. So you're carefully trying to map out, would people be comfortable in those situations, even though it's an open university. We have Muslims, we have atheists, we have non-Christians, but the majority of our population live a life through Jesus Christ. But those things, again, we ended up with a couple wins every year now, a couple ties, and we've had some players leave and go on to League One. These are things that were unheard of that I'm part of. Now, we haven't won a national championship, but the wins that we have fulfilled my life. They're unbelievable. So to you, I might say thank you. I don't think I've ever said that, for supporting that kind of journey, and the one other person that did. And that's where I am now. And I'm fortunate and careful to see what I step into outside of that. There's a small club just outside of Calgary called Cochrane, and two good people were there who were saying the same thing. We are not the largest club in the Calgary area. We could be anywhere up to 800 kids at our highest moments. Would you consider coming to this? And I thought they were asking me, like, I know you wouldn't come to this level. That level's no different than any other level. A child at one of the bigger clubs here, I think, is Calgary Foothills, is still a child, whether they live in Calgary Foothills they're at Calgary Foothills or Cochrane. So the process repeats itself again. What can I share? How can I share it? And always looking to learn. So that's where I am now. And fortunate to be on this podcast here.
With everything you've said there, I've just been sapping it up as you've been talking. And it's been and again, me and you have talked for many years, but it's always refreshing. And I'm glad you said it on here, where I heard two words that I think anyone listening to this, because we always hear winning. But we've never heard anyone, and we've had these conversations, the fact that the way you put that all together, winning with people growing. A massive statement, and so powerful, because everyone associates winning with what's on the scoreboard. Where are we in the league table? And not many people can frame it and really have an understanding of what we do and the impact we can have. So when I was listening to them, and I heard winning, but winning with our people, growing, not only now, but those, as you mentioned, those that have left, have now gone into other things, because you organize an environment, a supportive environment where people can grow. And as you were talking there, you mentioned about all your different experiences where you've been at. It's been about people growing. And again, that doesn't surprise me, because at the beginning, the two things you mentioned was mindset. And I want to put that out there for any coach who's just listening to what Coach Claude has just mentioned there. So many coaches want to make the jump to the next level, but are not prepared to put in, as Coach Claude says, maybe the jobs or the roles that don't have the prestige. But as Coach Claude just mentioned, it's about getting something from every one of those. Every one of those positions helps you grow and become stronger and honing on your craft. And Coach Claude, I just want to, that was really powerful. So really thank you for saying that. So on that then, you've been a coach educator, international coach educator, international coach, coach where Coach Claude is now in his leadership compared to, say, 10, 15 years ago. What's some of the major things you've had to really hone in on? Because again, doing what you're doing is not easy. And many people can go, oh, I can do that, without realizing it's a craft, it's experience, it's a love. It's really sticking to your why you do what you do. What are some of the biggest leadership qualities that you've encountered that you would like our listeners to really think about going forward?
I think right away, and you're almost alluding to it, is the simplicity of the game. We're talking football at the end of the day. It's the simplicity to find out how simple it truly is. When, pick a star today, Christine Sinclair or Ronaldo picks up a ball, they have to decide, do I dribble, pass, or shoot? Well, that 7-year-old kid is doing the same thing, right? So as you hear many times, the game will teach itself. But what does that really mean? Aspects of the game, if it doesn't look like football, then it's not football. There's a ball, there must be goals, and there must be opponents. So everything we do has to include that. Think of that. That's simplifying it, as opposed to talking the styles of practices and waves and those things. People will learn those on courses. So simplicity. Another one is diligence. You need to pursue the paths you've chosen fully. It's not simple to say, this is what we want to do, and someone else do it. You have to go and make sure. Sometimes that's micromanaging. And at other times, that's letting people also learn the way you did or the way I did. Let them go and let them find out the ways to do that. Let them take on projects. Let them give what they do know. We said you might not know everything, but whatever it is, give people opportunities to show that. Because then you'll be able to guide better and chart what contrary information you have for them or what you can solidify. The other one is never stop learning. I found there was a time in my career where I thought, hey, I've arrived now, this is my work and this is what I do. And there was a little gap where I wasn't concerning myself with learning. It was more, hey, this is what I have. I have this license and an A license from the States and then this and that. And you start to say, okay, well, I'm going to give the information. And then you realize you still know so little. I was fortunate again to hear someone like a Renee Samo speak in person or meet a Ruud Gullit and sit down and have, some drinks and a dinner with him. And you start to realize, wow, there's so much more to this game. Funny enough, Matt, I think it always ends up showing you how simple the game is. The other piece is, and we've said it a few times or today, is the planning. It is important to have a plan that's detailed and add to that complete flexibility. The craft, I think, is now when you're dealing with the people who have to hear, who do not know and cannot see your path or the vision you're setting. They can't see it fully. You can give them the end goal sometimes or landmarks, but there's work in between they don't see. For example, the majority of Canadian parents are becoming much more knowledgeable about the game. They understand that small-sided is probably better and that it gives their children more touches, and can we have it move? There are still those that might not have experienced it as an athlete or their siblings haven't. So those questions come up, and sometimes you might get 10 people approach, and they might be quite adamant and passionate. Now, no one's truly angry. They're looking out for their own children, and they're trying to find best environments. But you have to educate. So how do you take the time to educate them? Some people say we educate everyone en masse. Others say, no, as they come, we will speak to them and have different people speak to them, right? You have to also accept that there are different perspectives that must be addressed. I'm not a woman. So no matter how I look at something, no matter what I do, I will never see it from a female perspective. You have to allow for those voices. I will never see it from an Indian person's perspective. What I will do is try to listen and then share my perspective and see what we come up with. And sometimes, every time, that helps to set a new course, right? That's a very important part of the leadership. If I can't hear you, how can I guide you? And the other thing is to realize it's easier to pull than it is to push, in my opinion. So there are times the decision comes down to you. Even a normal football team is not a democracy. The head coach must make that final decision. However, a good leader, in my opinion, is understanding that if I hear from everywhere, I can make a better decision, because the more information I have, the better that decision. Should we play in these competitions? Should we lay down an education for parents? Should we have females or different ethnicities take control of certain areas because it's important, or you separate those diverse cultures? Those are all decisions, and you hear that by listening. On the flip end, and you have to be ready to justify and support and protect the vision you ended up deciding on. There will always be people diametrically opposed. So you can't complete both. You can't side with both. And you have to make those decisions. And the last piece I might add, and is maybe because of my Christian background, but servant leadership is very important. If you truly understand that, it's also a business term that's used a lot. But leaders are there to serve. They're not there to be served.
Yeah.
And it's a very, you were talking about craft. That is the most humbling piece, because you realize many times, maybe even once a day, where I think, I'm not serving here. I was dictating. I'm telling people how it should be. And you quickly have to figure out, how do I serve that person, that child, that parent, that group, team, that organization. So hopefully those are some of the skills I've articulated that I use and I think are leadership attributes.
Some nuggets there, Coach Claude. And yeah, I just want everyone, again, hopefully you're going to rewatch this through, have your notepad and pull it into your reality. But what Coach Claude just mentioned there is it's so powerful. And unfortunately, unless you're being mentored, unless you have a good circle around you who are constantly looking to push you and not just say yes, it's very hard to find these skill sets, experiences, people, and your mindset helps in your journey on where you want to go. But just wrapping it around with everything Coach Claude just said there, you know, those quite a few powerful tips that he was sharing with us there. I love that, Coach Claude. And again, I want to definitely have you on the channel again, because I feel like we can talk for hours, and you've just dropped some gems after gems after gems, you know, when we look at, you know, winning, grow, listening, and the power of listening and where it can go from there. So many little gems you've just dropped in this conversation. So I thank you again, and hopefully you'll come on again and bless us with more gems, because I feel like this is powerful for our listeners to hear, you know. So yeah,
Absolutely. Well, let me thank you and commend you for what you're doing. I know you're always trying to get the word out to everyone so they can see the insights, and you are a great example of a servant leader. I think that, and every time I speak to you, whether it's on a call, so I would definitely come back on, or just in person, you cause me to reflect. So today was almost like therapy for me, just to be able to reflect on what's going on. I just hope you're not charging me for it.
Oh, the invoice is coming.
Yes.
No, thank you again. Definitely, I'll be putting Coach Claude's school, as he mentioned, Ambrose. Also, you know, maybe you want to reach out to Claude. Maybe you're an athlete who's listening to this and going, oh my word, you know what? I love what Coach Claude just mentioned there. I have the same values, or I'd love to be under that guidance with someone listening, pushing me, helping me grow. So I'll be putting his phone number, but his details in the description. So if you do want to get in contact with him regarding schooling and so forth, that would be huge. But again, thank you so much, Coach Claude. And
You're welcome. Thank you.
We'll be talking to you again soon, okay?
Okay. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.